Hi, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about this term sacrifice. A lot of sacrifice has been required of the people of the U.S. empire and the ruling elite. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. Hold on a second. Garland Nixon here. And this is something I think we should talk about, something that is not discussed, right? The term sacrifice in response to the obvious crumbling and internal dismantling of the U.S. empire, right? So the word sacrifice, if you take it apart, it's kind of obvious. SACR is sacred, right? Something sacred, to make something sacred. So and feis, the etymology of the word feis would be to do, to make, right? So sacrifice would be to make something sacred or to do something sacred, or you could even argue to do something that makes something sacred, right? Because I do this, that means that I am showing that I believe that whatever this thing is that I'm doing this to represent, to symbolize, there's something sacred going on here. That's the term I think to keep in mind in regards to the U.S. empire, is that something, just what we have to figure out, is considered sacred, and that we have to do something to demonstrate, maybe a ritual, maybe give something up. Think about it. You have people who say, what are you going to do for this particular religious holiday? I'm going to give up ice cream, right? I'm going to do something to demonstrate, to symbolize that I believe that this particular way of thinking, this belief, right, is sacred, that I believe in a deity, whatever the case may be. I'm showing that I think something is sacred, and I'm going to do something that makes it sacred. I'm going to give up something that demonstrates it, right? What's going on now? Well, to say that the U.S. empire is struggling would be an understatement, right? What's happening to the U.S. empire? And when I say the U.S. empire, I do include um, the European vassal states, who it's clear they don't have independence, they don't have sovereignty, they're doing what they're told. South Korea, where it's, in their very constitution that in times of war, the United States has the U.S. has control of their military. So clearly they're not independent and sovereignty. Obviously, independent and sovereign. Obviously, Japan, Mexico, the Philippines. These are countries that are, if they don't have independence and sovereignty, that means someone is in charge of them. And if you look at their actions, it's Australia. It's obviously the U.S. empire. And in fact, within the context of the U.S. empire, there's even a hierarchy, I would argue. And the hierarchy being AUKUS. When the U.S. Empire felt threatened by China, the first thing they did was said, let's come together and bring the foundation, what they believe to be the foundation of the U.S. empire, in one group. AUKUS, America, the UK, Australia. What do they have in common? They're considered the Anglo-Saxon foundation, right? They're all the English-speaking countries. Even you look at Canada. Canada still has some French-speaking territories within it, right? Those countries are the ones that are English-speaking. They're considered the foundation. They brought them together. Okay, we're going to have AUKUS. We got to let everybody know this is a separate group, right? They didn't include anyone else except those groups. So to say, when we feel threatened, we got to bring together the foundation of our empire. Now, let's move on to this concept of sacrifice to make things holy. And let's look at some of the sacrifices. To me, the most obvious sacrifice came post beginning of the Ukraine conflict. And that was the sacrifices that were required of the European First, mainly the European, secondary, the Americans, and etc. But first and foremost, the European working class. You have to be, and working class, the European citizens, period. You have to, first of all, you got to suffer the most. And what they did was they filled the airwaves with propaganda. We have to support them, or else. Russia, a couple of things. We have to support them because we support democracy. That's a concept, right? We have to support this concept that we argue is at the heart of our empire, which is democracy, because democracy is good. Now, during the first part of the Cold War, they used something different. They used rhetoric that was kind of the same thing, but different. They said capitalism, and we're fighting against communism. But if you look at what's going on now, they had the same enemies. Russia, they hate, oh, Russia's terrible. Why? Because they're communists. We've got to fight against Russia. Okay, Russia's not communist anymore. Great. We've got to fight against Russia. Why? Democracy now. But Russia is a democracy, right? And it's inconsistent because some of their strongest allies at that time, Saudi Arabia, some of the Gulf kingdoms. Last time I checked, I think the Brits still have a king, as do a whole lot of other countries, and queens and things of that nature, a monarchy. So the reality was that was rhetoric for the people to say there's something sacred in this interest. And before it was capitalism was sacred that we're defending. You got to go die for it or whatever. Now it's, I got to give you something sacred. It's democracy. You're just defending. So what the leaders had to do was find some sacred term, concept that they could use to bamboozle the people to say, look, you have to make sacrifices for this sacred thing. Because it was always going to work out like this. You got to make sacrifices, understanding at the same time that you're making sacrifices. When you see these COP21, whatever they're called, meetings, the people who are in charge of that all land in private planes, beautiful planes, and they all get into limousines. When you see a meeting at the meetings in Brussels, whether it's the EU meeting, when you see the meeting for NATO, right? What do you see pull up? You don't see a bunch of old beat up cars with people that are freezing to death, cold, and don't know where they're going to get their next meal. They're driving in the finest luxury vehicles in the world with drivers taking them around. Their food is handed and delivered to them. They're eating pan-seared trout with a braised asparagus and crap like that. And you're supposed to suffer. You're supposed to take that red, white, that blue and yellow flag and boil it to make soup. That's the best you get. And they're going to eat the finest, a Chilean sea trout. So the concept at that time being, the working class have to make sacrifices. No, we're not going to make sacrifices. Of course not, because we are so important to the cause that we have to be in good mental and physical condition. We got to eat well. We got to have plenty of rest because we have to lead this thing against this evil enemy. The bottom line is we have to continue to always make sure that you have something sacred so that as we consistently ask you to make sacrifices, whatever it is, if it's going to be a sacrifice, there's got to be something sacred. Anytime somebody asks you to make a sacrifice, that the very word sacrifice implies that you're doing something in a manner, because of the ritual you're doing, the thing you're doing, you're making something else sacred. There is a sacred issue. There's a sacred concept. There's a sacred belief. There's a deity. There's something you got to suffer to show and demonstrate your dedication to this sacred cause, right? And the leaders are so critical to the cause that most of the time they don't have to make a sacrifice because they're too important to the cause. They're the only thing that keeps this cause going. Between you and communism, between you and authoritarianism, whatever word they can come up with an ism on the back, because ism kind of means it's amorphous and it's really, hard to understand when you add ism to the, in a way, when you add ism to a word, it takes away a definition. It takes away a crisp, defined concept, and it makes it very blurry and amorphous, right? Translucent. Somebody can say you're, I don't know, transphobism or something, right? What does that really mean? It means whatever they say it means. So they add an ism to make it good and fuzzy. And then that ism, whatever fuzzy thing it is so important and sacred that you now have to suffer. But they don't. The people in charge don't. Most of the time, we get to that too. So initially, what do we get in Europe? Whatever sacrifice we have to make. Two things. Number one, because authoritarianism, whatever, right? But keep in mind something. There was always a belief, a feeling in the back of their minds that could get weak at some time. That because they were using such a fuzzy concept that people could question it, and if people questioned it too deeply, they'd be in trouble. So because people started saying things like, "Well, wait a minute, we're doing all this for democracy, but a number of members of your diplomatic and political community around the world are not democracies. So how come we're not?" So there was questions to be asked, right? Obvious questions that ask themselves. So they had to add something else, and that is a traditional fear. So we're going to give you got to make a sacrifice because of democracy versus authoritarianism, but let's add traditional fear. If the Russians, of course, there's no such thing as Russians. There's only Vladimir Putin. If you're going to make this thing religious, you got to have a devil, right? If you're going to have, you've got to have an evil deity. If you're going to have a positive deity, it ain't going to work unless you got an evil deity, right? So you got to have an evil one. You got to have someone who represents evil. So now it's Vladimir Putin. So now it's Vladimir Putin is going to cross the Dnieper River into Western Ukraine. Off he goes to Poland. He's going to come across the borders in Finland, everywhere. And he's not going to stop until he gets to the English Channel, right? What does that mean? You've got to make the sacrifice. Why? Number one, because of authoritarianism and democracy or something fuzzy like that. Number two, because you'll be killed if you don't. You will literally be killed. I'll never forget. I was at the convention in 2016, covering the Democratic convention for a couple of different outlets. That time I was covering it for both Fox News and Pacifica Radio Network. And I'll never forget someone who was a big Hillary supporter was trying to tell me, I've got to support Hillary. I'm like, yeah, right, not happening. Oh, you can't vote for Bernie or support Bernie or whatever, anybody else. And I'm like, look, I don't want to hear it. I'm not supporting Hillary. I don't care. I'm not much on anybody else. At the time I liked Bernie, but I certainly wasn't voting for anybody. And if Hillary was the Democratic nominee, she wasn't getting my vote. And the woman says, if Trump wins, he'll shoot you. And I'm like, so if Trump wins, he's going to be like, get me to Garland Nixon's house right away. Bring me a carriage and horses. It's off to Garland Nixon's house. Ride into the night. Where to? Garland Nixon's house. What are we going to do when we get there? We're going to shoot him, of course. Well, that's what you do after you win presidency. What else would the president of the United States do but pick one out of 330 million people, drive directly to their house because that person must be shot? And at that time, I'm like, yeah, okay. How do you answer that? If Trump wins, he's going to shoot you. I remember, actually, I did say something. I said this. Me and my buddy Mike were there. That's right. I remember clearly. So when this person said, Trump's going to shoot you, I said, I'm not motivated by the fear of death. And she looked at me and didn't say anything and walked away because she understood that I understood the deal. That's right. I was like, I didn't say nothing, but I remember, that's right. I did say something. I said, I'm not motivated by the fear of death. The message was clear. You're trying to scare me, and you're trying to use the fear of death to scare me into taking an action. I'm not motivated by the fear of death. I'm out of here one of these days. And guess what? If the president of the United States wants me dead, I don't care who it is, and it's more likely to be Hillary, then what am I going to do? The U.S. empire wants to kill one guy. Trust me, he ain't making it. I'm out of here one day. And you don't have to be any particular place to croak. I could slip on a banana peel. I could be doing this video and just go, and my next point is, boom, and drop. We all know that. Once you accept that, I don't live to die. I live to live. And in living to live, I ain't vote for Hillary. That was my point. Ain't no universe in which Garland Nixon would vote for Hillary Clinton. That ain't happening. I don't care. You can give me all the Trump's fights in the world. Ain't happening. But this was basically the same thing. Number one, You have to make a sacrifice for the good of democracy. Number two, if that don't work, in that case, then you got to do it because you'll be killed. Doesn't that kind of sound like when an attorney uses that? Well, my client wasn't there at the scene of the murder, and if he was, then it was self-defense. My client never did not kill this person, but if he did, it was self-defense, right? That backup, right? Well, you're doing it for authoritarianism, man. If that doesn't work, would you believe you're doing it to save your own life? Basically, those two things. Once you come up with a reason for me to make a sacrifice, and you have to back it up for a second with a second reason, it kind of invalidates the first one. Well, Garland, you should do it for this reason. It's so important that you do it for this reason. Oh, okay. What if I don't do it for that reason? Well, let me come up with a second reason. You know what? That doesn't that kind of imply that if that doesn't work, you're going to come up with a third one, and if that doesn't work, you're coming up with a fourth one, which means what? That means something in and of itself, right? I've used this analogy. Guy calls his girlfriend, hey, I'd like to come over tonight, right? She's like, well, I got to wash my hair. And he goes, well, I'd love to help you wash your hair. I've never done that before. So I'll come over and help you wash your hair. And she says, well, yeah, but I think I might have to maybe at some point go visit my mother. Okay. What he should pick up is this. For whatever reason, she didn't want him to come over. Maybe it's the wrong time of the month. Maybe she's like, oh, I got cramps. I don't feel good. But she doesn't want to say to him, I have cramps, right? She's just, I don't feel good. Please don't come over tonight. And whatever reason that he gives her for coming over, she's going to give him a reason for not coming over. That's real life here. That's real life, right? What does that mean? It means she's not telling him the real reason. If somebody gives you reason after reason and they keep changing, it means they ain't giving you the real one for some reason. So when someone says you must sacrifice for democracy over authoritarianism, oh, by the way, if that ain't good enough, how about Putin's going to keep coming and kill you because he wants to take over all the countries? It implies, number one, if you don't buy any of those, there's going to be another one. And that in turn implies they ain't telling you the real reason. The real reason is because the empire is losing power. And now it says, hey, Russia's rising, China's rising. We got to take Russia down. We can't possibly tell the citizens, hey, citizens, you're going to have to make great sacrifice. Why? Because the ruling elite are afraid that they're not going to be able to rule the world, and therefore they're going to have to do terrible, terrible things to you, right? So they can't tell you that. So instead, they got to lie to you. So what we have is, I think what we've established is this: the crumbling U.S. empire sees a world where they're losing their grip on power. They understand that sacrifice has to be made, the ruling elite, and they want the great unwashed, the hoi polloi, right? They want the schmucks out there. They want us to make the sacrifices so they don't have to. That's the bottom line. That's what it's all about. Now, let's add this. In their defense, if you could call it the defense, it's becoming obvious that they're willing to make sacrifices too, that they're willing to make great sacrifices. Here's what I mean. If you look at what's happening in the Middle East, right? I read this article today. John Fetterman, who is a senator out of Pennsylvania, he's kind of Joe Biden-esque in that he's had these what do you call it? Some strokes or something. At times, he seems like he might not quite be all with us, if you know what I mean. And so this guy is, he barely hung on and he won. And the Democrats sort of celebrated, hey, we've defeated authoritarianism and evil because John Fetterman won, right? We're the good guys, and the goodness has won over the darkness of evil. So Fetterman wins. So recently, it's fairly obvious if you look at the numbers of the Democratic Party, 80% of the people want a ceasefire. A tremendous amount of really angry at the Democratic Party. They've lost their Muslim group. The young people are done with them. A lot of, Black people are drifting away for, Israel and a number of other reasons. So 80% of the, start with this, 80% of the party want a ceasefire. And there was a picture of Fetterman wrapped in an Israeli flag. And Fetterman let out put out a comment. And it was something like a statement, like, we stand with Israel, we'll give them whatever they want, no matter what, blah, 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 right? And even now, look at this. Here's the latest. All the heat Biden's taken, right? Look at this. Biden moves to lift all restrictions on Israeli access to weapons. The changes restrict congressional supervision of U.S. arms transfers by shortening the amount of advance notice provided to Congress before a weapons transfer, right? So what does Biden say? At a time when people are in the street by the millions, when his party is in revolt, when young people are like, we're done for you, we're not voting for you, blah, blah, blah. When the world is like, my God, you're killing a bunch of citizens and civilians. That ain't right. You need to stop. Biden's, what does he do? He looks at it and he says, hey, Congress is taking a lot of heat. It's possible that Congress may take so much heat that they can't stand it, and they may do something to restrict access, the flow of weapons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that we can get weapons to Israel so fast that Congress doesn't have time to act. That when we decide to ship weapons to Israel, we can ship them immediately, and Congress doesn't have a chance to rule on it, good, bad, or indifferent, right? So what Joe Biden's saying is this: we're getting a lot of heat from our constituents. Our constituents are not as immoral as we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some change to make sure. Now, think about what I'm saying here when it comes to democracy. He's concerned that the people may pressure Congress, right? The constituents may put so much pressure on Congress that Congress folds and says, we can't take it anymore. This democracy thing is hard to resist. And so, Joe Biden, you're going to have to chill out. Joe Biden says, we got to make sure that this democracy thing doesn't stop us from doing what we need to do. So he says, let's change the rules. We can get the weapons quicker to Israel. That way Congress doesn't have a chance to stop it. It doesn't have an answer. You don't give them much advance notice. Hey, Congress, just wanted to let you know we're shipping some weapons to Israel. When? Yesterday. Well, we wanted to rule on it. Yeah, that's why we shipped them yesterday. We wanted to look into it. Precisely my point. That's why. What's going on here? And how does that fit into the context of this conversation? This is an election year. One would think that the Democratic Party would be concerned about the election, that they would say, look, man, we're about to get our butts kicked. We are losing our constituency, some forever. We may be dismantling our own party. We can't do this. We got to think about, what's that word again? Sacrifice. Doing something to show that you are dedicated to a sacred cause. What we see now in the United States and really throughout these Western nations are leaders who say, we are going to, now keep in mind something. These are the people who told us they have to fight Putin because of something democracy. Stand for democracy over authoritarianism. It's all about democracy. Democracy is bottom up rule, right? Democracy is the people are in charge of the government. The people decide the way their country is run through their proxies, which are politicians, right? Now, what do we have? We have Western leaders who are now saying we have to act to thwart democracy. And one thing's obvious, Joe Biden's numbers are going down. Not that, Joe Biden, I don't see any way he can run. He's completely, his brain is Swiss cheese by this point. But I think Joe Biden wants to run, right? I think Joe Biden actually wants to run. I think he believes he can run and win and keep going or whatever. So what Joe Biden is saying now is, I'm tanking my party, tanking his party in an election year. Democrats, the youth, they're gone probably for good. The like a lot of Muslims and various people of good conscience are saying, hey, man, has to stop. We're not down with this, and we're not going to continue to support this party if you do this. And what Joe Biden is saying is, think about it. In order to keep Israel upright, doing what we wanted to do, in order to continue this slaughter, we're willing to sacrifice politically whatever we have to sacrifice. If it wipes our party out, it wipes our party out. So be it. So be it. There's something sacred here. Now, what is sacred? Joe Biden is the emperor. He's a guy who is the Mr. Joe imperialist, right? He's the leading edge of the U.S. empire. And what's really going on here is you got to understand the foundation of what's going on here. And if you've read and if you've looked into the Israeli, what's the word I'm looking for? Conflict, in the dynamic of Israel in the Middle East, it becomes obvious what's going on here. Obvious. And that is, number one, here's the context. Israel's not a country. You probably heard me say this before. Israel's not a country. What is Israel? I was going to say what Israel is, but you should never use is twice. Israel is a colonial military outpost, right? It's Dien Bien Phu, right? It's the French. We're going to put an outpost in the middle of what we consider enemy territory, right? And we're going to demonstrate our power by putting that outpost in the middle. And we're going to show you that in the midst of, and with Dien Bien Phu, Vietnam, in the midst of Vietnamese territory, right? Here's a area of territory in the midst of Vietnamese territory, in a place where one would think it would be completely and totally vulnerable. We're going to put a fort in there, and that fort and we will attack you from outside, all around that fort. And what that fort will symbolize our power. That fort will symbolize that in Vietnam, we can put a fort in the middle of deep in your own territory, and there's nothing you can do about it. We can attack you from that fort, and you can't do anything about it. It shows you our power. It will demoralize you. That was what Dien Bien Phu was about. Didn't work out so well. Okay, it turned into a shooting gallery for Vietnamese artillery until, needless to say, very shortly after the Vietnamese opened up on it, the French flag changed its colors to white. They had no choice because they were all going to die. And very shortly after, they got to live the hell out of Vietnam, because it was meant to symbolize power. It actually symbolized stupidity. But they did that. Okay. Israel is something similar. Israel is to say, in the middle of the Muslim world, in the middle of, most importantly, in the middle of the oil fields, the energy supply for the world, we're going to put a fort. We're going to put an imperial military outpost there. And we're going to demonstrate to the people in the area and the world that we can put an outpost there and ain't nothing you can do. And we can launch attacks and strikes from that outpost. There's nothing you can do. And that's Israel. It's that imperial military outpost. That's what it is, right? So the dynamic is that Israel is a imperial military outpost, impregnable. And so it acts as both a base to launch attacks and, from the perspective of the neocons, a symbol of deterrence. The fact is, you can see how powerful this is. And this shows that you better not try us, because look what we do. We can put this military outpost right in the middle of your territory. Ain't nothing you can do. It demonstrates that. So you don't try us. You better not try us. So what happens? And I'm telling you what this conflict's really about. It's not about Israel. It's not about the Palestinians. It's about the U.S. empire. So what happens? A bunch of guys on October 7th, a bunch of people in, let's face it, it has been described by high-ranking members of the Israeli government. It's been described by David Cameron as a concentration camp. A bunch of people in a concentration camp blow the walls, blow a hole in their prison walls. They come out, they get involved in a firefight. All the things that happened during that are still yet to be um, um, parsed out. It certainly appears that there were some atrocities committed. It certainly also appears that Israel did, in fact, kill numerous Israeli civilians. So all kinds of, and it also appears that Israel took a hell of a whacking militarily, right? They took a whacking that is, I mean, I think when this is evaluated when all the information comes out, and this can be evaluated from the perspective of a military, strictly, the military side of it, when the great military minds can get all of the information and look at what happened, they're going to say Hamas, from a perspective of military planning and execution, carried out a military act on the U.S. empire that is unparalleled in history. It's unparalleled. You know, it's like a couple dozen guys attacked an army of 500,000 and knocked them knocked them to the ground. 1,500 people with small arms, maybe some RPGs, very, very, very light arms. No air cover, no artillery cover, nothing. They went in there with their own toughness. They went in there dedicated to make a sacrifice for their sacred cause, right? Understandingly, they were understanding that they were likely to lose their lives. And they came in there and whether or not it was the Israelis knew about it, didn't know. I think that'll come out in time. How much they knew, what they knew, more and more is coming out. But I still don't think that they expected the Hamas fighters to be able to, even if they did say, okay, let's let this happen, I really do not believe they expected the Hamas fighters to be able to inflict the kind of damage on Israel that they did. When we look at this in time, they did a hell of damage to Israel's military. They killed a lot of military people. They kidnapped high-ranking people. They wiped out. I mean, it's when I think about what they did with 1,500 people, it is, like I said, it's an attack that was, unparalleled in someone assaulting a great power like this. So anyway, so what happened? It was Indian fool a little bit differently, because what the Vietnamese did on the French base was they dragged a bunch of artillery by hand. They dragged it up the side of the mountain. The Indian fool is down here in the valley. They circle the mountains with artillery all facing down on this base. I think it was 212 artillery pieces all facing down on one French base. One volley, 212 rounds hitting, and it's just, game, set, and match, right? So they did it with military power. They actually set up superior military power, and they overwhelmed the French base with superior military power. What the Palestinians, what Hamas did was they used, skill and cunning, timing, planning, all that kind of stuff. And so they had inferior power, and they punched a hole they punched a hole in their enemy's ship below the waterline, so that even after the fight is over, right? It's one thing to punch a hole above the waterline. After fighting's over, you can repair it. They punched a hole way below the waterline. So even after that was over, the water's coming in, and the water's coming in faster than the bilge pumps can work. That's the thing about Israel. The water's coming in a whole lot faster than the bilge pumps can pump it out, and this ship is sinking. And all they can do is, try to stop from the ship going down. So I move on. So what's happening here? This all takes me someplace. The Israeli military base was a deterrence to everyone around, hey, don't screw with the United States because we got a tough base here, and look how bad we are. We bad, we can kick everybody's butt. We can maintain this powerful military base and nobody can do anything, so everybody better be scared, right? So Hamas punched a hole in that concept, right? And so now the US is not supporting Israel in its quest to wipe out, quote, Hamas and all of the rest of the Palestinians because of some justice thing, or because they love the Israeli people, or they love Jewish people, or there's some religious context here. It's because they believe the U.S. empire says, we got a military outpost, and that military outpost got whacked. And we have to show to everybody in the region that that military outpost, if it gets whacked, can crush those who whacked it. We lost our deterrence effect. We lost military dominance in the region because our powerful outpost got whacked by some people in the region. And we have to reestablish dominance and deterrence. And the only way to do that is to go after the people who poked a hole in our empire below the waterline and kill them and wipe them all out. And then we can say, Hamas hit us, but we destroyed them all. And so anyone else out there, we want you to know that you may be able to hit us, but we'll kill all of you. That's what this is all about. Don't view Israel as a nation or religious something or whatever. If you view it through the context of a and I am going to get back to how this work fits into this concept of sacrifice, right? Don't view Israel through the construct of Judaism, religion, even necessary politics. View Israel through the concept of raw power, raw military power, because that's the only thing that the U.S. empire uses is raw power, military coercion, economic coercion through sanctions, etc. Right? From the concept, because why do I say that? What are they using now? They're using raw power. They're using raw power against the Palestinians. They let you know they're using raw power. That's what this conflict is about, raw power. They lost the symbol of dominance and deterrence in the Middle East, and they want that back for Israel. And they view the only way to get it back is no matter what they have to do, no matter what political sacrifices they have to make, no matter what economic sacrifices they have to make. It doesn't matter what they have to do. The empire must regain that deterrence, that dominance in the Middle East, because if not, from their perspective, they lose everything. We lose the Middle East. That's the way they see it. I remember reading something where Elliot Abrams was talking about countries in South America. He says, yes, we lost that country to a communist, and we almost lost that country. We didn't lose that country, right? In other words, we own all those countries. We own them all. As long as it's the type of government that we have, we own them. And if some revolutionary government comes in, then we don't own it anymore. We don't care about the people. We just care about owning those countries, because then we can take all of their natural resources and use that to fuel our economy. Cheap natural resources. And we can use that to fuel our corporate leaders. We want to make life, we want to make the world safe for corporate oligarchs. So now, understand what this is about. What is this about? It is about the U.S. having lost dominance and deterrence in what they see as the most important region of the world, which is where all the oil comes from, right? The energy-rich region of the Middle East. And their attempt to use raw and brutal power to regain that. And therefore, it doesn't matter what they have to sacrifice, because that, having that dominance in the region is sacred to the U.S. empire's dominance of the world. If we don't dominate the energy-rich Middle East, then we certainly don't dominate the world. And so that's sacred to empire, to the ideology of empire. The ideology of empire is complete and total dominance of the world, of the U.S. empire. Therefore, We got to dominate the energy so that people can't, everybody, we can't just have people getting oil anytime they want it without us being able to turn off the spigots, right? Can't have that. So we got to make sure that we dominate the region. And so it doesn't matter how many Palestinians die, doesn't matter what we have to do, we got to take Hamas out, number one. Number two, the issue now is sacrifice. What level of sacrifice? At home, let's get back to John Fetterman. His people at home are screaming. He won by a red frog hair, right? He won by a sliver. And now the people at home they're surrounding his offices. They're calling, flooding his phone lines. They're in the street saying, "You betrayed us," blah, blah, blah. And Fetterman's like, "I don't care about that. What do I care? I'm not here for you. I don't work for you. I don't like you. You do not matter." And that's the thing to understand about your members of Congress. That's to understand about your MPs in your parliaments. That's to understand about your prime ministers, right? They don't work for you. Their job is to ensure that the empire continues to have power. And they are willing to sacrifice you, even so much. They're willing to make sacrifices to this point. Another analogy. There was a Alien versus Predator movie. You know, I love my alien movies, right? I don't know, I just love any movies with lots of aliens and lasers and bombs, right? Love that kind of action, sci-fi, stuff like that. And the alien queen, if you understand that, the aliens, their blood is unbelievable acid that burns through anything. So the alien queen, she has these gigantic metal chains, and she's in them. She can't move, right? She's chained up. So what does she do? A couple of her little alien minions are running around. They get on top of these metal chains. Some of the other alien minions kill them, like they poke holes all in them so that their acid blood will drain onto the chains, burn the chains up, and then she's free. So basically the entire unit of aliens, her being the queen alien, other drone minions, worker bee aliens, they understood that we got acid blood. Our job is to stand here to have the other aliens poke holes in us so our blood can burn through the chains, thus freeing her. All the aliens understood their job, right? That within that context, there were people that had to eat and had to be eaten. In order to accomplish our mission, some also have to sacrifice. They were kamikaze aliens, shall we say, right? In the context of the U.S. empire, John Fetterman is that alien who knows that his blood is acid, and that his acid blood needs to burn holes through the chain, and holes through, burn the chains up so that his master alien can go free. When you put a member of parliament in, when you put your prime minister in, when you put your president in, you now, as a citizen of the empire, have to understand they don't work for you. And they understand that their job is, if it is, to live well and all that, but to sacrifice themselves if necessary to get the alien queen free from her chains. So Fetterman is there, and Fetterman understands, look, if in fact I need to betray my people, I won by a sliver. If I betray my people, there's no chance I'm winning again. It's not going to happen, right? But he understands it's my job. If the empire comes to me and says, this is what we need to do to maintain world dominance as best we can, you got to be sacrificed. Fetterman will say, sacrifice my political career. But understand something. Here's the difference between Fetterman and you. When they say to you, German, Brit, Frenchman, whatever, you got to sacrifice everything, which means in order to get you do whatever we need to do in Ukraine, you're going to have to give up your job, your pension, your rights to free speech, such as you have. You're going to have to give up everything. You ain't getting that back. When they deindustrialize Germany, it ain't going to be reindustrialized. So the German people are going to have to suffer now and forever. Same with the UK. I don't know if you've been paying attention. its economy is done and it ain't coming back. UK is turning it's just going to be a backwater country. If you live in Germany, in the UK, understand that they have decided that the UK is going to be impoverished and the people are going to suffer and struggle, and so be it. Who they could care less, because as long as the people that live in Capitol Hill are fine, they won't sacrifice. Hell with you. You mean nothing to them. Good. That's your job, to be sacrificed, right? But when it comes to members of Congress, their sacrifice is a symbolic sacrifice, not a actual, real, physical sacrifice. For this reason, you become a member of Congress. What happens when you leave Congress? Okay, you don't win. You people are mad because you went along with Israel or whatever, genocide, whatever, however people interpret it. And so they're mad, so you don't win. You lose. But do you? Because when you go into the US Congress and serve a term, when you leave Congress, you get your full salary, including benefits, everything, for life. You get the ultimate golden parachute. How nice would that be? Couple $100,000, all your health insurance, everything covered for the rest of your life. Never have to really work again. I mean, let's face it. And of course, there's all these jobs. You can get a job at a think tank, the Center for Neoliberal Exploitation of the populace. They are always hiring. They're the Center for making more pills to kill people. There we go. Sponsored by Pfizer, right? There's think tanks. They're going to hire you. There's corporations. There are numerous corporations that directly benefit from the machinations of empire. They know that when a member of Congress sacrifices for their cause, that one of their jobs is to provide a landing spot. So Fetterman technically is going to make that sacrifice. Fetterman's going to lose. They ain't going to forget. He's going to lose. He's going to come back. He's going to run whenever he has to run. What is it? 6 years for Senate. So he's in for 6 years. So automatically he's got 6 years. Can't touch him. At the end of those 6 years, and the guy's had some strokes. God only knows if he can count to 6 anymore, right? I don't even know if he'll know when he's out. But let's say, for the sake of argument, he gets out after 6 years and he's doing fine. Who amongst us wouldn't take a couple $100,000 right off before you even work a day? You got a couple $100,000 with all your benefits coming in. But then, having gave it all up for Israel, do you think there's one or two corporations that are owned by Zionists that ain't going to give him a call? Hey, dude, you think there's not a couple of Lockheed Martins and General Dynamics that's not going to give him a call? Hey, we made a lot of money off of conflicts. What do you need? Oh, about 20,000 a month, 30,000 a month on top of the 200,000 that I got. Here's what we'll do. We'll give you $1 million up front. We'll give you 250,000 a year for the next 5 years. And you can come to a meeting once a year as a board member. Once a year, all fully covered. It'll be in Chicago, the Bahamas, Denver, wherever the hell. You'll come there. You'll spend a week there in 5-star restaurants, 5-star hotels, 5-star everything, flying first class, and then, shake some hands and then go on about your business and collect your money. They'll be paid. So my point is this: you make eternal sacrifice. You're giving up everything for good. The politicians make what appears to be a sacrifice, right? It appears they're making a sacrifice because they lose their position, but afterwards they are richly rewarded. So the sacrifice. So let me put it a different way. So they have created a dynamic where it appears that they're making a sacrifice, right? To you, you're like, why is Fetterman giving up he's going to lose? Why are all these Democrats are going to lose? What the hell? Why are they taking a chance of losing? They're going to give up. They ain't losing nothing. How many of us, I'll put it to you like this. You got a job right now, you're making X amount of dollars. And someone said to you, look, you can be embarrassed, right? Something happened at work, right? Something got screwed up, something broke, whatever. And they say, here's the deal we'll make with you, Garland. And you're working in a warehouse. A forklift was damaged. You take the blame for the forklift being damaged and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to resign. And you resign. In return, we will continue to give your salary and benefits for life, number one. And as a token of our appreciation for the long years of hard work that you've done in this warehouse, we're going to give you, we're calling some friend of ours that own warehouses. They're going to put you to board on the board of Warehousing Incorporated. They'll pay you 5 times. So you're making, throw this up, 40,000 a year. Here's what we're going to do. Pay you 40,000 and everything, and we're going to make arrangements for you to get an extra 160,000 a year. So you'll go from 40 to 200,000 a year. All you got to do is say it was my fault that the forklift crashed. Who ain't taking that? And everybody will be like, Garland, I don't understand why. That you didn't wreck that forklift. You took the heat for the forklift for that company. That was that what they did, and then they fired you. What they did was wrong. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm just that kind of guy. You know me. You take one for the team. I'm always taking a spear in the chest. You know, what are you doing, Garland? I got to run down to the dealer and check on my new Mercedes. I think it's just been delivered from Germany. You know, I got a new special edition. It's and kind of hard to find. So toodles, bye bye. Off I go. Right? Was it really all that bad? No. I did what appeared. You take a real sacrifice. The ruling elite takes what appears to be a sacrifice, and then they are richly rewarded under the table. They get out, whatever. There's even people that'll go to jail. I remember, let's just say I knew some mafia people in my day, right? Okay. And I knew this guy who I ain't going to say his name. I don't know if he's still alive. Probably is, may not be. But at any rate, in this area, a lot of water, a lot of waterfront, a lot of money in this area. A lot of waterfront. On the rivers here. And I knew a bunch of guys who had. I was out on the water all the time. I knew a bunch of guys. They had the big thing that was in the 80s, right? Cigarette boats. Remember, were the big things, right? They all had these big, powerful cigarette boats. And this particular guy got caught up in something, and he was facing a lot of years, but he wouldn't talk. No matter what, he wouldn't talk. He would not talk. My understanding, as I was told, was he got 18 months and he kept his mouth shut, but he had the potential to get like 30 years, but he wasn't going to talk no matter what. Whatever he did, he wasn't talking, right? He wasn't giving up anything to the feds, as they say. No info for the DEA, as Biggie Small said. True story here. True story. And a guy, I knew where his house was. I'm not even going to say he had a company that did stuff because people may figure out. I ain't going to be the one. Look, I ain't going to be the one ratting, okay? But this was back in the 80s. All those people may be dead by now. But bottom line was he did his time and he had a nice home. Not a mansion or anything, but a nice place on the water. He had really kick-ass cigarette boats there that was sitting up on lifts, and he was always changing out the motors, and oh my God, really sweet stuff, right? He was mafia. He even had a real Italian name and a real Italian nickname. And I was told he started out as what was called a guerrilla. He started out where his job was to go out and rough people up. Hey, you owe us some money. He'd go grab people, slap them around, punch them a little bit, and say, look, you better pay or else, right? Next time I come visit you, it ain't going to be so pretty. That's how he got his start. Short, stocky guy, right? And bottom line was, here's the bottom line. And this is a true story. This guy, when he got out, they came in and bulldozed his house. They brought in bulldozers. His house, nice place, right? They came in with bulldozers, flattened it to the ground, rebuilt one that was 5 times that size. He was sitting right on a point in the Magothy River. Beautiful, beautiful location. Beautiful. New cars, new boats, everything. He was richly rewarded. Did he take a spear in the chest? Yep. Did he do 18 months in the Who Scout? Yep. Did he talk? Nope. And when he got out, it appeared that he took a spear in the chest. But when he got out, he was richly rewarded by the mafia. Good job. You kept your mouth shut. You're an honorable man. Here's your reward, right? True story. I'm very familiar with that story. I know the guy well. I remember a time when I knew him well. Where the guy liked me actually. I mean, every time I would see him, like I'd be out late at night at some of the anybody in this area has probably heard of the infamous Honeybee drive-through, right? It's a one of these all-night diners that never closes. 365 days a year, you can get breakfast going there anytime in one of these places, right? And so late at night, you'd be out partying, drinking at the bars, and everybody going there late. And I'd run into some of these mafia guys. Back then, they drove the big Lincolns and Cadillacs. They didn't drive Mercedes and stuff like that. And I remember I'd see him in there. And when I did, he'd be like, when I got to pay, hey, well, how much is my bill? Mr. So-and-so, those people that they covered you, Garland, they left the tip, you're good. Whenever I saw him, I knew I didn't have to pay. They really liked me. I could go into why, but I was good friends with the guy. Sure, some of them may be murderers and killers. Fair enough. But I kind of liked them, and they kind of liked me. We had an understanding, right? Shall we say. But at any rate, I treated them with respect. But the long and short of it was, my point being, and that is, I get all that back to say, you as the citizen take the spear in the chest and you bleed out. They take a symbolic spear in the chest, and their sacrifice isn't real. It isn't real. So what we're looking at now is the politicians in both the EU and the US now saying we will take symbolic, political hits if we have to. Economically, we're going to be made whole, but we'll take political hits, number one, if we need to. So when you don't ask yourself, why is it that MP or congressman or so-and-so is willing to lose on behalf of Israel? That doesn't make sense because they ain't going to lose. The appearance is that they'll lose. Politically, they may lose their position, but they will be richly rewarded economically for giving up their position and losing. So they don't really lose. You're the one that loses. Now let's get back to the concept of what's going on in the Middle East. I'll finish up with a little bit of this deterrence effect. And that is the concept that the reason the U.S. is doing this, is supporting Israel at all costs, is because they don't want their imperial outpost to appear to no longer have the deterrent and the dominant effect in this oil-rich region, right? Problem they got is huge. And it's manifesting itself in the response. I give a lot of credit to the Muslim leaders, the Muslim people, the Muslim civilization, because the response, I just got to give so much credit to the Muslim civilization. Because unlike the West, where we tend to just follow our leaders like schmucks, right? Hey, Garland, everybody vote for Hillary. Yeah, sure. Hey, we got to all hate Putin. Yes, sirree. We're told to hate Putin, and we got to love Nazis now. Yay, Nazis. Let's goose step and Sieg Heil. That's us, right? The Muslim civilization ain't that way. So what you're seeing now is throughout the Muslim civilization, you have some leaders who are doing their best to try to juggle, right? To try to say, I want to maintain my position in the U.S. empire. I want to maintain my power and my recognition in the U.S. empire, and thusly through the U.S. empire into the world community. And I'm struggling to hold back my population who's saying, let me at them, right? Okay. Where the people in the US will wander around the streets and, hold up a flag that says, I support Palestine. What's going on in the Muslim civilization? Syria. They ain't waiting around for, hey, government, can we act? No, they're attacking US bases. They're putting the pressure on. Boom, boom. And are they sending 10,000 people to attack and overrun a U.S. base? Nope. Ain't what they're doing. They're punching them. They're turning up the heat every single day. Some drones coming, boom. Some missiles coming, boom. Some RPGs coming every day. Every day. As I always say, they've said you can stay here as long as you want, but you're going to have to fight to stay here, right? You can stay as long as you want. Hey, you like Syria? Stay in Syria. But you have to fight every day you're in Syria. You willing to stay here and fight? You can fight. Right? So they understand their limitations and their strength. Their limitation is if they amass 10,000 guys, 5,000, and assault a U.S. base, the U.S. can then overfly that with these giant bombs and drop the bombs. And because they're all clustered together, they can get them. That's their weakness. But what is their strength? You got the watches, we got the time. Our strength is in small hits. So what we can do is harassing fire. What we can do is come in and punch you and then run back into the, come out of the jungle, as Ho Chi Minh said. We can strike you and then we can run back into the jungle like the leopard or the tiger does. And then you can't find us anymore. We disappear in the jungle. So you're going to stay in Syria. We're going to come out. We're going to hit you with drones. We're going to hit you with some missiles. We're going to hit you with bombs. You're going to come over there and the U.S., we're going to respond by bombing. Bombing who? It's a symbolic response because you don't even know who the hell's doing it. So the U.S. can do symbolic bombing runs so they can say to their people, yes, they attacked us and we did some bombing. But bombed who? Where? And let me ask you this. If the bombs were effective, did they stop? No. When you bomb, they turn up a few more. They're like, we're going to bomb you 3 times a day, attack you 3 times a day. Okay, you do a bombing run. Okay, we're going to attack you 4 times a day now. You do another bombing run. We're going to attack you 5 times a day. What they're showing is that what you're doing is futile, that you have no say here. This is our region. This is our home. And we do what we want here. And if you're going to stay here, we're going to put foot in your behind every single day till you leave. And sooner or later, you won't be able to handle it, right? We don't care. We ain't waiting around for our leaders. As I told you, I have people who I legitimately trust in the region, sources who have basically said the U.S. went to Iraq. Hey, man, we need you to talk to these militias that are attacking U.S. bases. Went to Iran. Hey, we need, and the word went to Iran, that basically the U.S. through its various channels went to leaders of Iraq, Iran, et cetera, and said, hey, man, can you back off? That some people even talked to the leaders of some of these militias and said, hey, man, the U.S., what can we make a deal? And the leader says, no, that ain't what we're doing. Thanks. Nice talking to you. We got bases to attack. Toodles. Adios, right? Bottom line, the leaders of these countries, this is the Muslim civilization, has decided to fight, not necessarily the leaders. So if the leaders say, don't do it, the civilization says, no, they attacked our civilization will respond as in the aggregate, as a whole. Our leaders do not define us. Our leaders, if they ain't doing what we want, will do it our damn selves. See, that's powerful. That's what we ain't doing in the West. We ain't doing that. I don't know why. Maybe we don't have the history, maybe something, I don't know. But the Muslim people say, you attack the Muslim civilization, you will get a response from the Muslim civilization. And if we got leaders that don't go along with it, we ain't going to fight with them. We're not going to depose them. We're not going to cut their heads off. We don't need them. We'll do what we got to do. Right now, add what's happening to Yemen. Yemen's just like, screw this, man. Time to get some work done here. Hey, what do you know? An Israeli ship. What do we have here? Think we'll go over and have a talk with them. They take a ship. Another ship. Hey, look at that. Another Israeli ship. Just happens to be in range of our drones. What do you think, huh? I say we act. Right. So the people of Yemen, they're like, hey, you're launching an attack on our civilization. There's going to be a price to pay, brother. We're going to act. So what do? Boom. They're hitting Israeli ships. Right. What is the U.S. going to do? Bomb Yemen? Hey, we're going to go in and we're going to start bombing Yemen. You've already bombed Syria. How'd that work out? You bombed a couple spots in Iraq. How'd that work out? Did nothing. Zero. Nathan. Why? Number one. Let's get back to this. The people in the Muslim civilization are willing to make a sacred sacrifice. They're willing to make a sacrifice for what they believe is sacred, right? And what they believe is sacred is protecting the lives of their people, right? Protecting their respect of the civilization. You ain't just gonna come in here and disrespect us, treat us any kind of way, genocide our people and walk away. It ain't happening, bro. You gonna disrespect us this way? You got a fight on your hands, right? So the bomb don't matter. They are that if you bomb some of them, they're willing to make that sacred sacrifice, which is give their lives, injury, whatever the case may be. Hey, look, we got to fight. Whatever sacrifice we have to make to protect our civilization, to stand up for our civilization, that is a sacrifice. See, the leaders do not have to ask the people in the Muslim world to make a sacrifice. See, if the leaders tell you to make a sacrifice, they determine what's sacred. They determine what you're making a sacrifice for. Hey, you're making a sacrifice for authoritarianism. Well, what the hell is that? Don't worry about it. You're making a sacrifice for democracy. What? No, I don't understand. Shut up. Make your sacrifices, right? In the Muslim world, they hold the Quran sacred. They hold their culture sacred. They hold their way of life sacred. They hold their land sacred, right? That's what they hold sacred as a people. That is not determined by any particular leader. A leader can come now and a leader can be gone in 10 years, 100 years. But what they hold sacred is not going to change. Here, whatever leader comes in, Trump comes in, we hold this sacred. Biden comes in, we hold that sacred. They change the word from communism, democracy, authoritarianism. They'll come up with another word. Don't matter, because they believe that they can determine what you should hold sacred. And the schmucks here, unfortunately, bite the hook all too often. Not all of us. A lot of us, like the people in the chat, don't. Right? The people that are watching this don't necessarily bite into that hook. But the people in the Middle East have determined we hold the Palestinian cause. They hold that sacred because it represents their right to determine their own future and determine who's allowed to come into their lands and what they're allowed to do. So the U.S. and Israel, we're gonna wipe out the Palestinians and show that we're in charge. And they're like, okay, well then we're here to fight, and if we need to sacrifice our lives, we'll do it. Okay, so we're going to hit you in Syria. Oh yeah, we'll bomb you. Yeah, like that's going to slow us up. Hey, we're going to hit you in Iraq. Okay, we'll bomb you there. Oh, yeah. Whoa, boy, we're really scared. Ain't gonna bother them, right? And Yemen's a poor country. They don't have much. They don't have money. They don't need much. I mean, it would be nice if they had more. But because of the things that they hold sacred, they don't need anything other than the basics for survival to hold their religion and their culture sacred. It would be fair and nice and reasonable if they had more, if they were able to benefit from the natural resources in their lands. But they also understand that if they don't stand up for their sovereignty and independence, they'll never get that. That even then, that the U.S. and its vassals will come in and anything they got, oil, gas, or whatever, that's going to get stolen anyway. So they might as well fight for independence, because if they don't get their sovereignty, they don't get any benefit from anything else anyway. So now the U.S. is now, what has been exposed is the U.S. empire. We had Israel there as a deterrence. We were holding up a sword, basically, a shiny sword to scare everybody. What Hamas demonstrated was, it was always a fraud. It was always just a shiny, pointy. You know what it was like? Where some guy puts his hand in his pocket and he pretends like he has a gun. You ever seen that? They go like this. They hold it. Don't move. Like he's got a gun. It's just his finger. And what the people in the region realize is, this whole Israel thing could never do but so much. You can't. What are you going to fight? The people of Yemen, Iraq, Iran, Syria, on and on and on. Lebanon. You can't fight us all. And so now they've started, that heat's going to continue to turn up. I've said it from the beginning. People are saying, well, there'll be a regional war. No, a regional war implies two things. Number one, it implies that these people are fighting amongst each other. That ain't happening. They're fighting all on the same side. But it also implies state actors. A regional war from the perspective of the West implies the U.S. is fighting the Syrian army, the Iraqi army, the Iranian army. That's why the U.S. we should bomb Iran. They want state actors. What they've learned now is it's a civilizational war which doesn't include state actors. It doesn't need state actors. The Muslim people have decided, screw this. We don't need our leaders. This is our fight. And we'll fight our fight the way we choose to fight it. And we don't need our leaders, because our leaders may possibly be influenced by the West. So we ain't got time for that crap. We'll fight our fight the way we need to fight it. Now, that being said, there are state actors, I believe, who understand those dynamics. Why? Because they're Muslim. Because they have the same culture. They are the same culture. They're part of the region. And they understand very wisely that to go head to head with the U.S. empire is not their strength. Like anything other fight, you're fighting a guy who's bigger or stronger. You understand your strengths and his weaknesses. You don't want to fight to his strength. They don't want to fight to the strength of the U.S. empire, which is state actor to state actor. So I believe what you're seeing is these state actors who understand that saying to these non-state actors, what do you need? Oh, we need some money. Got it. We need some RPGs, missiles, things like that. Oh, okay. Nobody's looking. Here you go. Here's some drones. Here's some missiles. Here's some RPGs, but you didn't get them from us. Yeah, no problem. Right. So you get a collaboration between the state actors who understand it's in their best interest for the non-state actors to be the leading edge of the battle. So they supply them with the things that they need to fight. They understand that the battle is not a short one. The battle is to outlast their enemy, to exhaust their enemy, in the same way that the Russians are working to exhaust the empire in Ukraine. Right? They're fighting and fighting. The Russians could make a move. The Ukrainians are getting weak, but the Russians don't need to. They lose a lot of people if they launch a big attack. They're going to exhaust the West. The West is going to get tired. Their tongue's going to be hanging out, and they're going to, as I say, in self-defense and martial arts, the ideal victory is when you take a feather and you touch your opponent on the forehead, and he's so exhausted that he drops. You didn't even take a punch. You blocked every punch. You moved. You kept him running, and eventually he collapsed with exhaustion. Right. So look what Yemen's doing. I got to add this, and this is critical. One of the dynamics that is important when it comes to Yemen right now, and that is one of the concerns of the Chinese, valid concern. Why does the U.S. have this big blue water, so-called blue water navy that can go all over the world so they can dominate the shipping lanes? What is China concerned about? Choke points. What are they trying to do? Let's build more railways. Let's build more things with Russia to connect us physically with Russia, not using the sea, because the United States is devious and diabolical. And what they'll do is, if we get in a war, everybody's like, oh, U.S. can't defeat them. So what the U.S. will try to do is choke them out. Well, there's a choke point here, a choke point there. We'll make sure Chinese ships can't go through, and we'll win that way, right? We can win that way. Well, what is the Chinese doing? What is one of the most important regions in the world? Middle East. Are there choke points? Let's see. There's the Straits of Hormuz. There's the Bab al-Mandab Straits. There's the Suez Canal. You're talking Red Sea. You're talking Persian Gulf. You're talking very, very, very important choke points for the world, right? When it comes to energy. And the U.S. wants to control those choke points, but it knows it's going to have trouble doing it. So what does the China do? They build great allies, powerful allies in the region. China is allied with Saudi Arabia, with Iran, with all of these oil producing countries. We're buying their oil. Saudi Arabia is building a gigantic refinery in China with they're both paying for it together. What does that do? That ties Saudi Arabia and Iran together. It is benefiting China to get their oil Saudi Arabia. It benefits them to get their oil to China, right? So what's going on? Again, let's get back to this. What the people of Yemen, the government of Yemen, not the government of Yemen, the fighters of Yemen is demonstrating this to U.S. You don't control the seas no more. You don't control the choke points anymore. Yeah, you got subs and you got ships, but they can't be everywhere all the time. Do you have enough ships, United States, to patrol the entire region? Do you have enough subs to patrol the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Indian Ocean, huge ocean, on and on, Mediterranean, all of that? Do you have enough ships and submarines to patrol all of that? Because look what we can do anytime we want. Little old Yemen, we can go out there. Israeli ships going through, we can take it anytime we want. There's nothing you can do about it. They came out with speedboats and helicopters. You don't have to be a rich country to have a few speedboats and helicopters and drones. They can afford it. And if they can't, they got friends who might just help them afford it, right? So what they're demonstrating, this is powerful, extremely symbolic to the U.S. is U.S. empire. You tried to take Russia out with sanctions and taking them off SWIFT and all that stuff. China came in, and let me add this. A lot of people say in this new world order, China's not carrying their weight. Yeah, they are. Their weight is economic. China came in as a backstop for Russia and said, we'll buy anything Russia's selling. We got the money and we need the stuff. So we'll buy it from Russia. We'll keep Russia operating fine. You go after them economically. We got enough money to help, not just prop them up, but they got stuff to sell and we need it, right? So their part is to demonstrate that the United States, through its IMF, World Bank, SWIFT, all that stuff, can no longer dominate the world and intimidate countries economically. What's happening in the Middle East is little old Yemen is demonstrating now, hey, US, yeah, you can't control the waterways anymore. You can't control the choke points anymore. I don't care how big a blue water navy you got. This is a big planet and they can't be everywhere. Now, can they? No, they can't. So again, what the US empire is doing is bit by bit being crippled. And the Muslim world is beating the hell out of the US empire. For starters, 1,500 guys with small arms attacked the US empire's most important imperial military outposts and knocked the hell out of it. Knocked the hell out of 1,500 guys. What else do you have? You have just small militias with light arms and stuff like that, constantly poking, prodding, and destabilizing U.S. presence in the region, these bases, and they're reminding the U.S., look, we can punch these little bases anytime we want. If you up the ante and start attacking state actors, you see what we can do to bases. What can some of these state actors do to your bases? Far worse. Meanwhile, you have the Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a step up, and they're still on a state actor. Recently, the U.S. was threatening Hezbollah, Israel saying, yeah, we should bomb them more, the U.S. should attack them, blah, blah, blah. And Hezbollah did this. Let me see something. Let me see if I can find this as a important. Things are moving slow. Doggone it. Well, I can find it. What Hezbollah did is they kind of Onyx. There we go. And let's go here. Here's an article, because these articles were everywhere a week or so ago. Hezbollah's anti-ship missiles bolster its threat to U.S. Navy, right? And they talk about that they've got powerful Russian anti-ship missiles acquired by Hezbollah. Gee, I wonder how they got them. Hezbollah means to deliver its leaders veiled threat against the U.S. warships and underline the grave risks of the regional war, right? And they said Hezbollah groups says they anti-ship missiles, including the Russian-made Yakont missile with a range of 186 miles. They also have these Onyx missiles. So bottom line is this: somehow, who knows, they got their hands on some Russian anti-ship missiles. I'm not, saying who could have given them to them, but somehow they got them. But the bottom line is this: as the U.S. threatened Hezbollah released pictures of these missiles with descriptions of them. Hey, don't forget, man, these missiles, they're pretty nasty. We got a couple different kinds. We got plenty of them. We don't want to fight. We don't want to fight with the U.S. We're going to skirmish with Israel on its border. We ain't going to take them so far. We're going to punch them. We're going to elbow them. We're going to kick them in the groin. But we're not going to try to cut their throats and kill them. So we're going to skirmish, heavy skirmishes on the border with Israel. But we're not going to take this to the level of a war. We're not going to do it. And U.S., you know that if you decide to come in and bomb us, you can do a lot of damage. But you don't have a state actor to attack. What are you going to do? What are you going to say to the people back home if you start attacking us and we start unleashing these missiles? And you know what we're aiming at. It ain't going to be some, troop carrying frigate, for God's sake. It's the big boys. We got the easy targets. We're going after these aircraft carriers. So they let it clear we got anti-ship missiles and plenty of them. So don't get froggy. We ain't coming after you. Our beef is with Israel. We're going to keep it fairly civilized. We'll hit them as much as they hit us. But if you get any ideas, understand that we can bloody your nose and we can bloody it bad. And how you going to go back home and explain that a non-state actor sunk your damn ships and knocked the hell out of your fleet? You got 62 targets, 72, however many targets out there. Do you really want either 50 missiles coming whistling or one a day here and there? You want a salvo of missiles coming at them, 50, 40, 30 missiles, supersonic missiles coming in on you, and you're struggling to stop them, and one of them, two of them, five of them get through and hit your aircraft carrier, and it ends up on the bottom. Is that what you're really ready to try to go to explain at home? Right? So you have Hezbollah using the same kind of deterrence that the U.S. empire claims that they use. And ultimately, it comes back to this. Hezbollah will make the sacrifice if they need to, but they're being wise. They're using wisdom to say, if you do something to U.S., if you make a threat, we're going to parry that threat. We're going to make a counter threat. We're going to block that punch, and we're going to tell you we can throw punches too. Right there, you being smart, and they're just dragging this thing out. They understand that they don't, though they may want to. They understand that they don't have the physical kinetic power to come in and just take Israel out and to stop the fighting. And they also understand how unstable Israel is, and they could start throwing nukes around. So they're using their advantage, which is time, which is asymmetric warfare, which is small punches in every area they can, and last but not least, to punch a hole in U.S. superiority, both on land and on sea. The fact that the Houthis are taking Israeli ships, and there's nothing that the U.S. empire can do to stop little old impoverished Yemen from doing that, is a demonstration to the world that the U.S. empire ain't all it's cracked up to be. That it ain't got the power, and that it's one thing to say you have the power, it's the other thing to be able to execute it. That they had everybody scared. Oh no, they're going to rule the seas. They're going to rule all the choke points and all the shipping lanes. And what Yemen is showing is they can't do. Well, look, here's what Yemen's saying: you may be able to rule the shipping lanes way out there in the Pacific or some damn where, or maybe you can, maybe you can't. That don't come before us. But you ain't ruling no damn shipping lanes around here. These are our shipping lanes. This is our region. This is our community. This is our civilization. And we will maintain control of it. And if you try us, then you got to fight on your hands. We got to make some sacrifices. We'll do it. But you're going to have to come a long way from home to fight. How long you got? How long you got? We got 1,000 years. That's the bottom line. All righty. Let's look at, this was interesting. All right, come on. I want to go to the very top. We're going to look at the super chats. Always got, okay, let's see what we got. The super chats are always fun. Sparky, ruling elite dream of borderless world run by a central authority, yes, is in danger of going down the drain due to the unwashed masses finally being tired of their crap. Yes, you are right, brother Spark. All right. How about we go with Chicka Boom Boom too, says Garland. Why is it okay for Israel to de-radicalize the Palestinians, but not okay for China to de-radicalize Uyghur terrorists? Is it a double standard? Well, if you watch my video the other day, what I talked about was the New World Order and the place for all countries in the New World Order and what it looked like. And in a New World Order that I described, that I think Russia and China and the global South are looking for, is what? Let's see if I can recall, a transparent set of consistent standards, right? Standards that are consistent and transparent, not this New World Order, international law, right? Consistent. Hey, this is what you can do. This is what you can't do. This is who can do it. Everybody. This is where you can go to read it. So you're right. Double standards. The New World Order is about transparency. Anybody can go to the United Nations website and read. These are our standards. This is under what circumstances, who can do what, why, when, and where. It's transparent. It applies to everyone. So that's a good question. It is not okay. And that's why we're getting a New World Order. That's why the New World Order is coming into play, because lots of countries want a transparent and consistent set of standards throughout the world. That's called international law. That's the UN versus Rubio, the rule-based international order. Okay, Israel was a British neo-colonial strategy passed on to the US. True, Britain planted each seeds of animosity between Jews and Arabs to keep them down, like they did with India and Pakistan. Brilliant, Sparky, as always. How about we go here? Most Israeli civilians, if not military, too, killed on October 7th were killed by the IDF. Hamas had no Hellfire missiles, but the IDF did. Sparky, it is, we're still working to understand that, but it's certainly, the evidence is coming out that the Israelis were responsible for a tremendous number of Israeli civilians being killed. How much so? I think we'll find out over time. I think people will be surprised. But yes, were there atrocities committed? Certainly. I mean, in military conflict, this happens. It's unfortunate. Hope it doesn't happen. But the bottom line is you are right. We need to know the truth about this instead of the just, rhetoric about beheaded babies. Chickaboom. I noticed I haven't heard about Putin war crimes anymore. Now is Netanyahu, Hamas been screwed up everything for the U.S. Exactly. They're exposing the hypocrisy. And again, what do we get back? Consistent set of standards. Now the world's like, hey, I thought you were against war crimes. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, it's okay to turn the electricity off for your adversary. When did that happen? Good point. Let's keep going. I know we got some more. Sparky says, U.S. green-lighted Hamas attack on Israel for routine regional tension stir-up, but not realizing IDF's stand-down delay. Success surprised Hamas fighters who also don't know about U.S. connections. Interesting. Could be. I would not say that is false because there could be some truth to that. On the Runner Front was a great movie. I could have been a contender. You are correct, Sparky. Make Israel Syria again. In those Ottoman Empire days, Jews and Arabs got along fine. You are quite correct. JM, always a great show. Thanks a lot, JM. Just a stream of conscience. I just have an idea and I just start talking. I don't know what the hell I'm going to say. Nermeen Ali Reza says, as an Arab, it really surprised me how the West seems to ignore the fact that the Palestinian cause has been ingrained in all of us since childhood. All we want is justice for our brothers and sisters. Yeah, exactly. You are correct. You are correct. Well, now the Palestinian cause is growing worldwide, and I think it's beautiful. Ali Reza says, Nermeen, the Arab leaders went to China and Russia for a Gaza conference, essentially cutting out the U.S. True. Are these political moves making Washington nervous, as this is a language they don't excel in? Yes, and come on, think about this, Nermeen. Tony Blinken, that guy, when it comes to international politics, is about as sharp as a furry marble. He is clueless. When you have people, I'm not saying he's a stupid human being. He may be brilliant when it comes to book smarts. When it comes to wisdom, he's one of the stupidest people I've ever seen in my life. He can't even understand this. This conversation wouldn't even make sense to him. We're in charge and we're powerful and we'll punch you, we'll beat you, we'll knock you down. Yeah, you're correct. It's not making them nervous. They don't even understand it. It's a language they can't even interpret. Raphael, is Yemen a situation when they send a small man to attack you, but the whole family is hiding, waiting for you to do something? I don't think so. I think it's the Yemenis are not small. The Yemenis are big, man. They got a pair. And so what the Yemenis are doing, the people in Yemen are doing, what Ansar Allah is doing is it's standing up and fighting the way it knows how. It doesn't have the means to attack on a large basis, or damn sure it would. If it had an air force, they'd be flying towards Israel, but it doesn't have one. So what it's saying is this: what options do we have to join the fight? Whatever options we have, we're going to use. So it's using its options, which are we can take out some ships and we can do some things that you're going to make you unhappy, and we're going to do it. Look, some guy attacks me. You know what I'm doing? What do you think I'm going to do? Do you think I'm going to go into the fist of some giant muscle man? No, I'm not. I'm going to attack his eyes. I'm going to attack his throat. I'm going to strike his groin. I'm going to twist his fingers, maybe try to get him in a wrist lock. I'm going to try to strike the ribs under here. There's no muscle there. Maybe I can strike those ribs. There's lots of things I can do. Maybe some pressure points, kick the kneecap, right? There's things we can do if we have a more powerful enemy. There's things we can do. There's weaknesses. There's things we can do. Do you know, what is it? Well, anyway, you get my point. They're attacking areas that they're able to attack. They're exploiting the weaknesses in front of them. The U.S. as the empire presents a target, they attack that target. That's it. You stick out a fist, you presented something. I may be able to grab that. I may be able to twist. I may be able to snap your hyperextend your elbow. When that hand comes out, I may be able to do something with that. You presented a target. I'm going to attack that target, right? So you're going to you're going to attack what's in front of you and what you have the ability to attack. And so guess what? The people of Yemen, they've got a waterway next to them. So there we go. You got to sail ships past their waterway. You're presenting some targets. They're going to attack those targets. That's what they're doing. They're doing what they can do in the fight. Let's look at Rockfin. Did anybody in Rockfin have something to say? Yes, they did. Let's start with JVB. Garland, you're batting 1,000. Thanks, JVB. And JVB. Okay. I'm sure there's more. Carl Smiley says, Garland, Syria is not just Muslim, neither is Palestine. Yeah, I agree. Good point. Good point. Because I'm saying Muslim, but I'm going to say the Muslim civilization and the Middle Eastern civilization. That's why I said civilization. Because let's face it, the safest place for Jews historically was in the Muslim world. They were never pogromed and mistreated. They were welcomed and allowed to live there in peace for many, millennia. While they were in Europe and Eastern Europe getting killed and pogromed and all that stuff, they were welcome and treated with decency and respect in the Muslim nation. So, the Muslim world is not a place that when people who came in traditionally different, they just killed them or hacked them to death or treated them bad. That's the history. Any issues today are recent as a result of Western influence, but historically they were a peaceful people who it coexisted with people. I believe you are talking about the Semitic or Arab people, not the Muslim people. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Yeah, but keep in mind when you say Arab, you've got Arab, you've got Persians, right? And again, you have other religions throughout the Middle East. So, I say the Muslim, we can say the Arab, we can say the Persian. There's a lot of terms we can use, but in the Middle Eastern region, a regional civilization, there's a long history of a beautiful civilization in that region. Very highly respected intellectual civilization. All the sects of the Mideast religion are there: Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Druze, etc. There we go. I got so many smart people. Well, I think that's it. Let me see. Did I miss any? No, I didn't. All right. Thanks a lot. Holy crap. Well, an hour and 30 minutes. That was a long one. Probably longer than I usually like to do, but hey, it is what it is. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. A couple of things that are important. Number one, go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. You can become a member there. It costs absolutely nothing if you can afford it. Please become a subscriber. It's $14.99 a month, and that helps the channel, and that helps keep Rockfin on the air. Appreciate it. Otherwise, just become a member. It costs nothing. And if I get tossed off of YouTube, you'll be able to find me. Follow me on Telegram. Of course, patreon.com. You understand what that is and how it works, no doubt. Buy Me a Coffee is great. What Buy Me a Coffee /Garland NH. What Buy Me a Coffee does, you can go in there, buy Garland a coffee for $5. How many coffees do you want? X amount. And it's just like Patreon. If you choose now, you can become a monthly subscriber and you can buy Garland a monthly coffee for $5 or whatever the hell. I don't know. So that's an option. And last but not least, my Cash App information is there. If you can support the channel, certainly appreciate it. If not, hey, so be it. If you can't afford it, just take care of your family and don't worry about it. But what everybody can do is two things. Number one, you see the like button, you must brutalize the attack button. The like button. You must attack the like button, terminate the like button with extreme prejudice, right? Elbow it, kick it, assault it, knee it, beat the living crap out of that like button to help the algorithm. Number one. Number two, share this on all your social media platforms. As you know, not exactly on Twitter anymore. So it would be highly appreciated if everybody who has a Twitter account shares this video. Thanks a lot, everybody. Peace. Have a wonderful day. I'm out.